You know what? I hit start streaming. Let's see
Yay.
if we're on the internet.
Fallout Equestria. Project, this is fuckery.
You know what? I hit. Okay, we are on the internet. Show time to just find where OBS is among my myriad of programs and fade in. Email. Okay, hello, Applewood Wasteland. Welcome to the haphazard train wreck that always ends up being the Radmir podcast. But I mean, I'm joined today. I'm Comic Sans Pony, in case you don't know, by the head of the NHS art department, Chalkfee. Zen from Dead Tree Studios. Oh, hey, DJ Strike just showed up as well. And
Hello.
Special guest, Skybolt from... Well,
I love the picture on there.
yeah, it's... It used to be a Photoshop document that I could edit and, like, remove people who aren't there, but I don't have Photoshop anymore, so I have an image of just...
And I don't have the original file.
No!
I have...
On one of my other computers.
Hey, I have the Photoshop document. I just can't edit it. So I can't remove people who aren't there. And so the image of Skybolt is blocking the two of the people in the picture that are not that are not in the current call.
Do it.
But anyways, so we are here to discuss the well, among other things, the upload of the Nightmare Night special, Chilling Wasteland Stories to Tell in the Dark, which, if you couldn't get the reference, it was based on scary stories to tell in the dark. It's a anthology of scary stories that I remember reading as a kid, and I know it's been turned into a couple like R-rated movies in the past. I think there's at least one that I'm aware of. It's weird because it's not really like a terribly scary book. They're spooky, but they're not. But I guess they can turn anything into an R-rated film, I suppose. So yeah, I've been trying to make this anthology series for roughly 3 years. The original idea was that it was an episode of The Storyteller, where we'd break from the normal convention of telling long exposition dumps of various lore things in the wasteland, to have like the storyteller happen upon a group of wastelanders just sharing random scary stories, which only I think one of those stories actually ended up being part of the final version of this. Then I tried making it like just a thing I would write on myself on FimFiction, I think last year, and I got writer's block. And then this year I'm like, let's try this again. After looking for something to listen to and finding East Corp's Twin Terrors thing that I hadn't listened to before, I'm like, let's listen to that. And I'm like, ooh, this is an interesting idea.
Oh, yeah.
So, yes.
I could tell the history of that if you want later on in the call, because that's got its own ups and downs.
But yeah, so I guess we'll go in order of the stories, because I decided I'll make it 10 different videos, because at one point there was also an idea of making it sort of a choose your own adventure, and if you listen to enough stories, you survive the encounter with the stranger. But now there's just a bad ending where you end up dying. You as the listener.
Tasty.
But I'm like didn't have things prepared. Let me just open up YouTube so I can see the exact the order of the playlist, because apparently I forgot what that order is.
Well, of course you forgot. You didn't even write all the stories.
Well, I created the order where it was more or less Skybolt, me, Chalkfee, except there was just more or less, so it wouldn't be like the same person writing back-to-back stories. Okay, so our part, which was the one of the three written by Skybolt. So the questions that I what inspired this story? Anything from like the Fallout Equestria story? Anything you like? What exactly inspired it?
Well, the neat thing for this is I'm not too familiar with the old Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark series. As a kid, my big horror series was Are You Afraid of the Dark, the Nickelodeon classic. But obviously with East Corp, we've done a lot of radio play type stuff of different lengths. And so this was actually a new one for me. We'd never done something this short form before. So it was a good challenge. I thought it'd be really neat to think, okay, what are some just like literally like not only stories that would that you would tell around like a wasteland campfire, but stories that may have taken place around a wasteland campfire. And so that eventually led to, okay, what about instead of a campfire, it's like a cooking fire? And then, okay, what are all the fun things you can do with food scarcity in the post-apocalypse? And I thought this would be a fitting one, where if you don't have something to supply for your daily portion of the meal, then you have to literally supply it yourself.
Which is pretty interesting. I sorry for interrupting.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, for your story R part, I did find that pretty interesting at the end. Oh, in case of spoilers, in case anyone didn't read it or
there's a blanket spoiler alert. Like
Yes.
it's been like a week or two since it uploaded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was on
Well,
Halloween.
Yeah.
Yeah, in
'Cause the-
hindsight, I should have
oh.
probably uploaded it before Halloween because everyone's doing Halloween things on Halloween, even during a pandemic. So, you know what? I just realized that all the other questions were basically answered. I don't think there weren't very many different. It just comes along of like, it just will come down to what inspired the story, and however. You already decided to reveal about that. Oh yeah, so when I was making the wiki pages for this, I more or less implied that this unnamed community was somewhere in the Five Highways wasteland. Was that true?
Yeah, I think I could have been. It wasn't one of those specific things I was tying into Confessions of Wasteland Pony, but it definitely could work. More so, the third story is the one that's very explicitly a card.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the only thing because you mentioned that the highway's going on forever, and that sounds like the Five Highways from Confessions. So that's what it's described as on the wiki.
It's close enough.
Well, I mean, I suppose that unless there's anything else you want to mention about that story, the sort of implied cannibalism story that was great. It's like very sorry.
I don't feel like that was implied. I think it was explicit.
Completely explicit.
That's fair. Because like cannibalism isn't a lot of like Fallout side quests like
I like cannibalism.
Out of context, that's a really bad thing to say.
Look. In the Fallout universe, cannibalism it's like cannibalism in the Indiana Jones universe. It has a very obvious and real world benefit to anyone who participates in it.
Well,
It also helps you get in good with a bunch of mask wearing people.
I was
Yeah, but like
sorry.
Like there's the what is it? Something of Breakfast of Champions or Meal of Champions, where you have to have eaten all of the leaders, and then you get like a perk that gives you luck every time you eat someone. That's great. That's a really good perk.
And there is just in general the cannibalism perk.
Well, yeah, you have to have the cannibalism perk first.
Yeah.
I'll be honest too. Of our other short form series, the Wasteland Survival Guide, one of the favorite episodes I ever wrote was our cannibalism episode, which you can see on our East Corp channel. We went with a non-conventional music choice and video production, and it just gave it that little extra spooky edge, even though we released it like fucking March. Oh, I'm sorry. Is this what's the rating for the podcast?
We're not monetized, so it doesn't matter. We're not gonna be demonetized for it. So
I'm sorry. I'll be more careful anyway. Yeah, we released it in March, but it was a fun story just because I don't know, it worked out really well and people really liked it. So I'm like, let's write about more cannibalism.
Yeah,
You
I
see, if
was
had actually,
I was talking with the person who's super big into like both Fallout and Fallout Equestria lore, and so if there's ever a point where I can't figure out part of the lore or how to adapt something to create new lore, I consult with him. And which actually our part was his favorite story out of the ones that existed.
Oh yeah.
Because he was telling me how in Fallout, like the game series, apparently being a successful cannibal is actually one of the FEV mutations. Because under normal circumstances, if you were to consume human flesh, like it would be terrible for your body. You would like get like shakes or get really sick. But if you don't and can like continue that cannibalism and be like a functioning human being, quote unquote, apparently you have been mutated by one of the various FEV mutations. So whether that carries over to Fallout Equestria, and apparently it must be like a mutation of some kind to be a successful cannibal, is up in the air. But it was kind of interesting to learn that, because I actually didn't know that. So...
Well, yeah, I mean, like, people are also psychic in Fallout. Fallout's weird.
Yes, there's also supernatural elements in Fallout. Just another weird thing.
They're not...
It was like Skybolt stories were all about like wasteland stuff. Chalkfee's stories were all about weird science, and for the most part, mine were all about like supernatural stuff.
It's a good blend.
So,
But no one wrote about the gang of grannies.
Oh yeah, that is a classic.
next year. If I decide to do this next year, maybe I'll make it one video next year instead of the 10 videos. I just wanted to like harkening back to the.
I feel like it's better if it's separated, but like, yeah, whatever.
Or I can release it as a full like all-together video as well, because having it separate allowed me to link the video on FimFiction as well. So
it was very convenient.
Yeah.
Although, if we get access to those inside little screwy things, maybe we'll be able to link little sections of it of videos.
Like the thing where you can like make like sections of your video.
Yeah, chapters. I want that so much. I need it. I need the thing. It'll be so convenient.
Yeah.
Oh, so convenient.
So speaking of supernatural stuff, my first story, well, not counting the intro, which I did technically write, The Ghost of Merspa Hut, which was the person who narrated that, the Looney Turtle. Apparently that was one of his favorites to voice. And it's actually based on an actual scary story I heard as a child. There actually is a set of huts in New Hampshire, the Appalachian Mountain Range. The section in New Hampshire is known as the White Mountains, and among the White Mountains, situated along the Appalachian Trail, are a series of huts called the Appalachian Mountain Club Huts, or AMC huts. And one of them is called Mizpah Hut, which is, or at least was, one of the more difficult huts to climb to. And so when I was like 10 or 11, we had decided to go on a trip to where we would hike from ground level up to Mizpah Hut, and then over to Mount Washington to go to Lakes in the Clouds Hut, one of the only huts that has running water, because it has 2 lakes on the side of a mountain to get running water from. Side tangent aside. But while we were at Mizpah Hut, going on these like hiking vacations, which I'm not as big a fan of now that I'm an adult that isn't very active, but when I was younger, I would enjoy these vacations, but I was also the one who would say, why do they make these trails so long? Which I literally put into the story as an actual quote. But at Mizpah Hut, just before like Lights Out, they were telling scary stories, and this one was actually about something that allegedly happened back when the trails were a little more unsafe. There was a family, I believe the girl's name was Rachel or something like that, and she didn't fall off a cliff like Pointed Path did in The Ghost of Meretz Bahat, but sudden rainstorms caused actually flooding on the trail, and she supposedly drowned and was, again, much like Pointed, misdiagnosed as being dead and put inside a body bag, and the next morning they found her having clawed her fingers down to the bone trying to get out, and because of the storm, no one heard her. And even the second part of the story involving a missing child was in that original story. And there was an even added element of spookiness that I couldn't figure out how to ponify, that the missing child, his nanny, was apparently also named Rachel, and so it was extra spooky that, like, both this person that they actually knew who the child somehow could have been in contact with and this ghost that kidnapped him temporarily were both named Rachel. But I couldn't figure out how to put that in there. And in one draft of the story, I had an MOM agent report that they saw some specter in the corner of the basement, but it had gone over 1K words, which I'll get into a second why I chose 1K as the word limit. But I keep getting emails. Oh, someone subscribed. Cool.
Yeah.
But so I basically based I was like 11 or 12. I was pretty young at this point, and wasn't still not, but I've gotten better with it. But I'm not the best when it comes to horror and like scary stuff. Like, around Halloween, sure, I enjoy it. Like everyone else, it's fun to be scared around Halloween. But any other time of the year, no thank you. I was even worse when I was younger. And so I heard this story, and I was, like, terrified. I couldn't sleep, but I didn't want to bother my parents about not being able to sleep. My overactive imagination kept, like, imagining some, like, female specter in the center of the bunk room, which, based on the story, could have actually, quote-unquote, existed. Since the ghost still haunts the hut to that day, kind of thing. Like, they don't use the basement anymore, and that's where she haunts, etc., etc. And the ending of that little anecdote is I couldn't sleep, but at some point my body did end up falling asleep. But not until I puked on my pillow, and also didn't want to wake my parents to deal with that. So I ended up sleeping the rest of the night with my face in puke.
Oh, no.
That's gross.
And so the story kind of stuck with me, and so when I was trying to come up with ideas for scary stories for this project, I'm like, what if I ponify the ghost of Mitzvah Hut? So that's my long-winded explanation for why I included that story. Chalkfee, the next story that was the first one you wrote, Cuddle Bunny. What's the inspiration for that?
Okay, this is gonna be a long explanation. One sec.
Okay.
You had to ask me right after I ate a Snickers.
They do satisfy, though.
Anyway,
Studios is not sponsored by Snickers.
Other candy bars are available,
But
as they say in England. In fact, Twix is better. Anyway, what was it? All right, okay. So Cuddle Bunny has been with me for a while. It's sort of an idea I've had for like since before I even created the lore that backs her up, and because I've been wanting to. God damn it! Somebody's shooting fireworks or something. Sorry. So I've wanted to have this sort of like hybrid character, and I wanted to have hybrid characters show up in my fics later on. Mainly, I want this to show this kind of thing to show up in. Can I mention it? Comic? Do you think?
I mean, are you actually going to make it a future production for NHS?
I mean, yes, but like I need to be poked to do it, so.
I mean,
Okay, anyway.
it's your project, so you feel free to spoil what you want to spoil.
Okay, so this is an idea that I've had for a very long time of having these pony hybrids. And it's based off of like a few things, some of which are definitely not safe for work. But it's the idea that someone can have a drug and take a drug that transforms them, right?
When actually, special for the podcast, Chalkfee used some of her own money to commission art of
I forgot about
some of the stories. So let me just.
Did you grab the right one?
I have to go back in our personal chats. We have all those pictures of the cutie mark for that one character.
I pinned it.
Oh yeah, you pinned
it. I pinned.
But continue while I find this picture.
Yeah. So it's a the idea is for like a transformative drug, and this company that creates these transformative drugs. And obviously, I had to make a reason for it to be exclusive to this one area, or at least very rare everywhere else. And that reason was just regulation, and that it was a very difficult thing, and it was just very much in testing.
Yeah, it's the
so in universe,
Aramaspi.
Yeah, Aramaspi is the area that's immediately below the San Palomino, which is right next to Applewood. The Aramaspi is an area that's on the official map, and it's named after that Cyclopean creature from the Griffin episode.
Oh yeah, the Cyclops race, the Griffins fight.
I need to turn up Strike's volume. I can barely hear him. Okay.
I can barely hear him.
Oh, I'll fix that.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, no, so it's a very good idea, but I had to develop that a little more, obviously. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to introduce that kind of diegetically into a story before introducing it later on into the project that I'm working on for Nuclear Horseman, which is it's called Ethnogenesis. It's the story of how the first factions in this area were generated and created by the people who survived the bombs, and then how they survive going forward. And I really wanted to focus on that because that's a story that's not really told all that often in Fallout and in Fallout Equestria. It's a little bit told in Fallout 76, but nobody pays attention to that, which is why I'm using some of the lore from Fallout 76. You can post hate in the comments about that, but I want to make it really work out because I feel like there's some of this stuff that really is interesting and fits with the more general ideas. And it also allows me to do other stuff. So what I did with Cuddle Bunny was I took this idea of the transformative drugs and I made the transformative drug company Lapine Industries, which is named Lapine because it's rabbits, and I had it be Lapine Industries, at least my current conception. I might get rid of it, but it's at least partially funded by the Ministry of Peace, and specifically funded by the section of the Ministry of Peace where
Project Chimera?
Doom Bunny. Huh?
Project Chimera?
Well, no, it's Doom Bunny.
Oh, you're right.
Good old Angel Bunny.
Vibes, but not being Chimera.
Yeah, it's a little bit different because it's a drug thing.
Yeah, I posted
more of an
in the podcast planning chat for those in the call the image, and it should also be on screen. This is supposedly the moment in the story in which Lucky Charm is transforming into her, I believe it was her bunny, half pony form.
Yeah, the colors, at least of her original form, I did not think about at all, so I will credit the artist. Speaking of which, at some point after I'm done talking, I'm going to go link that so you can put that in the description comic. Put her...
Anxious.
Huh?
That image makes me anxious.
So the only really thought that I had was that I knew that she was going to be a mottled brown when she was done cooking. And so the artist originally was making her white because the rabbit was white. And so she just took the white part and stuck it on the other half. And that worked out fine. I really like this picture and how it really represents what's happening. It's a transformative. The drug is being administered, and she's being transformed into this cryptid, this creature.
Like how you have the tail covering where the cutie mark would be, because you were also going to have the cutie mark change.
Yeah, see, I didn't choose that. She just decided that on her own. But whatever. It looks really good in my opinion. I like the nose and the way that her hooves are breaking apart into paws. I think that's really interesting, and so that really worked out in my favor, and I'm glad of that. But so the story I wanted to tell was of this like creature, right? And so I couldn't think of exactly how I wanted to do it, and earlier in the idea was more like what we'll talk about later with comics next story, or is it the third one?
I don't know. Are you referring to one signature or?
Yes.
Okay. We'll get to that.
Yeah. So when we get to signature, that one, yeah. Once we get to signature, I was originally thinking of something more like that, but I decided I would go with an audition, and I created this character, and I thought she would be really adorable as a proxy for horror, because I feel like it's really great to just drive the horror in if it starts out with this really cute kind of thing. And I guess I probably get that from reading way too much Goosebumps as a kid.
Oh, those are classics.
Oh, I love Goosebumps. The TV show is also a classic. It's a classic in being really dumb, but it's also great.
That theme song, though.
It is.
Viewers beware, you're in for a scare.
Yeah, no, that comment. There was actually a Goosebumps that I guess kind of inspired this fascination I had with the Transformatives originally, which is I can never remember the name of it.
Oh, is the one
because
where
I always
they turn into a bee?
No, it's the one where the guy turns into a dog.
Oh, okay, that one.
I keep thinking it's Bad Hair Day, but I know it's not Bad Hair Day because Bad Hair Day is about like a magic rabbit.
Which also could have easily been inspiration, but you know.
Yeah, no, but that story has really, when I was a kid, it really drove home this fascination with the idea of characters transforming into animals that obviously I've carried up to now. And so I've had a lot of these ideas going for a long time. That story is great, by the way. The twist is wonderful. If you don't know the twist, I recommend you read it or watch the episode, although the episode was not very faithful. It was funny, not very scary.
Isn't Goosebumps on Netflix currently? Or is it
I think so.
Or does Hulu own the rights to it? There's too many streaming services.
I think it must be Netflix, because I don't think Disney had anything to do with it, and I feel like Hulu's slowly bleeding off everything that's not owned by Disney.
Anyway, is that...
Yeah.
Okay.
No, so that's kind of what inspired the story. What were the other questions?
I forgot what they were, so especially because a lot of the inspiration questions kind of have somewhat lengthy responses, so that's the only question.
Why
a bunny? Why not some other animal?
Because I like bunnies.
True.
Also, I wanted to use Cuddle Bunny, which is like this one term that's stuck with me for a very long time. Cuddle Bunny is from a book series I like to read called Monster Hunter International. That book series has one of the characters who, when she was a kid, she befriended a Shuggoth, and the Shuggoth calls her Cuddle Bunny because she handed over her stuffed animal and said Cuddle Bunny, and so the Shuggoth is like, "That's your name," and it's kind of adorable in a weird, creepy way, and I love that.
Cool.
Who doesn't want a pet Shuggoth?
I don't even know what a Shuggoth is.
Nobody does. It's an amorphous blob of eyeballs and mouths.
It's classic Lovecraftian.
Oh yeah, no, it's one of the best Lovecraftian things. Even though I don't,
Testament angel kind of ball of eyes.
it's a sludge. It's like a living goo, but with eyeballs and mouths, and it's black. Usually,
The DeviantArt of it online is pretty amazing. Different interpretations.
Yeah, there's a lot of great interpretations of it. If you've ever seen someone interpret what a mimic looks like when they're not transformed, it usually looks like a Shuggoth as well, because it has that kind of inspiration. It's good stuff. I think that's everything I have to say about this. I'm not sure.
Oh, we can always come back to it after we've gone through all the stories. So next up was Party Time by Skybull, which definitely has the moral of don't do drugs.
Yeah, I definitely, like you were saying at the beginning, I guess mine all fell sort of into the wasteland perils category of the, of themes. For this one, I thought, okay, so we have, again, shorter form stories, and the thing I thought, what's usually the best kind of scary you can relate at like campfires or things like that is something that a situation you could easily find yourself. Something very, very relatable. So like, if you're telling it to like younger kids, it's something like, oh yeah, when they were in the school bus and then, the seat came alive and ate them, or Jeepers Creepers, the monster landed on the roof and tore you right out of the window. Anyway, in that vein, I thought, okay, Wastelanders and, whoever they might be telling this to, they would relate to just the plentiful nature of all these drugs everywhere, not only because they were so present during the war, but because they do have a notable effect, for surviving battles or speech checks or whatever, on top of their natural addiction. So that would be a very real concern is, how many is too many? What's going to be one too far where you can no longer distinguish from reality and fiction anymore, and then you end up shooting your own daughter and just sort of tried to frame everything around that.
Yeah, it was. I liked how it's never been a side effect of mental, but I like to think that because of the degradation of mental faculties, because of it probably easily could be the hallucinations. That was definitely interesting, like how like it was his mind like interpreting that, oh, this is the biggest badass among the raiders, so they have flaming manticore horns and glowing red eyes, or this raider is very persistent like a hellhound, so now their face is a hellhound. That was actually kind of cool.
Yeah, and sort of implied that he has a history of not just party time mentals, but other stuff in the past. So this is the straw that broke the pony's back, so to speak. But yeah, just the ever-present reality of trade-offs. Everything in the wasteland. Like, you have to take one turn, you might get to a well of clean water, but there will be no food there, or vice versa. Or having to hit something to eat, but it's very radioactive and you're already at your limit. So those kind of really hard like decisions of will you save yourself from fighting raiders at the risk of shooting your kid, and then maybe end up doing both.
Yeah. It just makes me wonder if Little Pip hadn't gotten clean, if this could have been her in a couple months accidentally killing Velvet Remedy because she's high on PTM.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds perfect.
One of the alternate universes.
Or it could be the actual universe, and everything we saw in Fallout Equestria is just her high fueled dreams.
That's true. Yeah, Fallout Equestria almost has a little bit of unreliable narrator to it as well, being that it's sort of her autobiography.
And it was also
ironically,
it was edited by the Twilight Society, who knows what they changed.
Ironically, the one with the probably the most reliable narrator out of all of the main fics is Pink Eyes, because Puppy isn't the one actually narrating.
Yeah.
That's true.
Watcher is.
Yeah, so that's probably the most reliable narrator out of all of it.
I'd say Heroes is pretty reliable because I mean Hired Gun might not be the smartest mare, but she's writing her memoirs, and so there's probably a lot of editing involved.
In the head so many times.
She got smarter from being hit in the head.
Writing.
But between cybernetic
she got hit in the head so many times, she got a perk out of it.
She started the story with below average intelligence and ended it with about average intelligence. So Hired Gun got smarter over the course of her story.
It's funny, most of the characters, that's the one where most of the main fic characters were intelligent, or at least. Actually, is it just Little Pip that's intelligent? Because Blackjack's kind of dumb as shit,
Blackjack
too.
repeatedly says that she is not a smart pony.
She's dumb in a different manner, though. She's more reckless.
The difference between wisdom and intelligence kind of thing.
Exactly. I was literally about to say that. It's a difference between having a low wisdom score and a low intelligence score.
Bringing it back to Chilling Wasteland Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Yeah.
Man, is that a mouthful? And the titles are only going to get longer if we do this multiple years in a row.
I still think it should have just been stories to tell in the wasteland instead of wasteland stories to tell in the dark. It's so clunky already.
Anyways, bringing it back to that, the next story, One Signature, which I only ended up writing because when I asked Skybolt, I figured maybe I'd get one story. I've got 3. I only have 2 stories. I probably should write a 3rd.
I want to give a lot of options.
So what'd you say, Skybolt?
I just want to give a lot of options, choose from.
Yeah. This one was also semi-inspired by a story that written by Dice Warwick, who was going to write a story for this anthology, but I really had to get strict on that 1,000-word limit because otherwise it did kind of feel like it lagged. And I didn't realize until I got Skybolt stories that they're best if they're third-person, past tense, omniscient. Sort of where they know the thoughts and feelings of all the characters, but it's being told in past tense. And
I feel like that's always the because it's a campfire story. It should be in that manner.
And so I don't want to spoil.
One of your stories does break that.
Yeah, some of them break that a little, but I don't want to spoil Dice Warwick's story because he might still end up publishing that one, but it had a similar twist. And so I was thinking, when I was trying to generate this story, I thought about, I was re-listening to Fallout Equestria, because I do that every couple of months, because why not? It's a good story. And I got to the point where Little Pip was in the Iron Shod factory and fighting the brain bots, and she questions, are those pony brains? Are they animal brains? Whose brains are in these jars? And in the actual Fallout games, especially during Automatron DLC from Fallout 4, you find out that it's what?
Nothing.
Oh. The Automatron or whatever it's called, where it was prisoners, and so. That's why this is the only one of mine that doesn't fit the supernatural theme of a lot of my other stories, because it shows a prisoner basically being tricked into signing away his life in exchange for a commuted sentence and compensation for his family. Who knows if the compensation was actually given? Because they were just tricking prisoners into thinking, oh yeah, you can totally see your wife and daughter again, just sign on the dotted line. You can trust me. I work at Robronco. And Zane ended up a brain bot, and and I just like the idea that brain bots, like they're actual pony brains or even zebra brains or whatever, prisoners of war brains, that they were then wiped, but like sometimes they forgot. And so that's what happened with in that story, where the second half of it, when Zane wakes up and he's in control of the robot. I realized afterwards, though, that especially the version of the audiobook that I listened to, the one by Visual Pony, I think it describes the BrainBot's voice as being high pitched, but I had it being a low pitched robotic voice. And so, I mean, maybe there's a setting in the robot that can change it. So, I mean, it's a minor continuity error. Maybe some of them had low voices, or maybe the high-pitched thing is because of 200 years of no maintenance, or something. But that was inspired by Little Pip's musing of, where do these brains come from? And so I answered that question. Prisoners.
It's a very good question.
That's all I really have to say about that one. So the next one, Possum Pizza by Chalkfy.
You gonna post the art?
Oh, yes. There's art for that one too. Give me a sec.
yeah.
I just realized that the Cuddle Bunny art is still on screen. Has been for the entire time that I was talking.
Oh yeah.
Yes, the beat red wagon.
I'm still mad at that. How did you get that?
It was supposed to be beat up Red Wagon, but like I didn't want to. We were getting close to the deadline. I didn't want to have to do new re-recordings, so.
It's not beat though, because it's meant to be the specific color. It's supposed to be a red flyer, like the thing that inspired the Scootaloo scooters.
I'm sorry, I missed the word up.
So give me a second. It's still. I'm gonna drop it into the chat.
As we all know, I will never give you up. As we all know,
What does that mean?
Spike will never give us up.
Okay, that makes more sense than the previous sentence.
Yeah.
Okay, now Opie. Yes.
We're no strangers to love.
You know the rules.
Anyway, so this one is probably the most obvious as to where the inspiration comes from. Although there is a little bit of expansion to go with it. I've wanted to bring in Five Nights at Freddy's kind of stuff into the My Little Pony, into the Fallout Equestria world for a really long time, because it just fits the whole experimenting on children, on the customers, all of these dangerous work things. It really fits into the Fallout vibe. Like the corporate just fucking, hey, we're really bad at our jobs, but we don't care because we're not going to get sued. Or like, you have to budget getting sued into the budget, that kind of thing. It really fits in with a lot of the Fallout kind of ideas of corporate greed. And so that was part of it. And the other part is just because it's fun to have these little robots, it's like sitting around that do things. And essentially, in my interpretation, they're basically just unintentional or like traumatic or accidental. I don't know the exact phrasing that I'll use when I actually write down exactly how they work, but they're unintentional soul jars is what the Fallout what the FNAF animatronics are. And so what I did is I wanted to instill this, but I wanted to come up with a chain that would really change the context of everything. I've been trying to figure out this chain for a while. In this case, I ended up with Petunia Possum. As you can see in this art, she is terrifying.
Yep,
way more scary than I imagined.
Petunia's Pizza Palisade. Try saying that 5 times fast. Strike could.
I had
Petunia's
difficulty saying it once.
Petunia's Pizza Palisade. Petunia's Pizza Palisade. Petunia's Pizza Palisade.
What is
Petunia's
a palisade?
Huh?
What is a palisade?
It's a type of fortification.
If I ever release bloopers, it just took the Strike trying to say that alliteration.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of bloopers of me trying to say it.
Palisade is a kind of fortification. They used them in forts, like Civil War forts. It's like the kind of the wall thing, something about that. It's like how I think it's like the kind where you have two walls, but there's nothing in between. It's that kind of fort. You know, like you have two walls and then there's stuff in between, or there's nothing in between. That's the palisade, is when there are two walls on either side rather than one thick wall, which allows there to be more structure to break, which makes it a lot easier for it to absorb impacts from cannon fire, which is why it became popular after cannon. Anyway, not important.
Well,
I guess it is important,
part
but
of so it's important.
So Petunia Possum. So I didn't really come up with a backstory for that name. Originally, I was thinking about using the I think comic you gave me this idea. I was going to use the pets of the main six as the different animatronics.
Right.
Oh
yeah, and Luna, according to the comics, has a
Luna
possum
has
named Tibbles.
a possum, and that's where the possum came from. Obviously, I like possums. I have several friends who really like possums, including the artist, who I still have not gone and gotten a link for. Anyway, I'll stuff that in. Stuff.
It'll be in the final version of the podcast that goes online when we're done, so it's fine.
Yeah, but I still want it to be in the description. There are 5 people watching this. I don't know how many of those are us.
One of them is me.
Several. One of them's me, so... anyway.
Point.
I am not
so
one
you
of them.
actually have viewers.
We have at least one viewer.
I'm worried we're going to have an issue like the last podcast, like the first hour of it, or something like first 20 minutes maybe, was just like all robot voices.
Who knows? No, because I heard it a bit. It was fine. Anyway, so that's why it was a possum. It was because of Luna's pet being a possum, and I kind of extrapolated from there. And I decided pizza was fine for the main chain because I just like pizza, and I wanted to use the kind of reference to the there's a blink and you'll miss it reference to the to the Chuck E. Cheese pizza controversy.
That's how I described to the artist for the picture for that one. I said a Chuck E. Cheese pizza, specifically.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, I know Chuck E. Cheese pizza isn't great, but the one thing they do right, and there are only like 2 other places, there are 2 big chains, and then everywhere on the West Coast does this, and one place on the East Coast does this. Cornmeal dusting on your pizza crust is so good. Oh my god. It is the best. And this is coming from someone who grew up in New York, so I have had real pizza. Cornmeal dusting makes it better. It just does.
I'm the kind of person that actually likes pineapple on my pizza, so my opinions on pizza
pineapple
don't
can
matter.
go on pizza. You just have to
Same.
balance out the pineapple with something salty. The classic is obviously the weird ham shit, and then there's anchovies
about to
that also
say,
work. I use feta because I'm still a vegetarian for the most part.
You just
Feta works
anchovies.
really well.
I love feta.
Anchovies.
Feta and pineapple chunks, if they're both the equal size, are perfect on a pizza together. They go perfectly.
Apparently,
I have to say too, another thing Chuck E. Cheese always did well, in my opinion, at least I remember as a kid, was their sauce. I always liked whatever blend they put into their pizza sauces.
It's a mass-produced sauce, but it's fairly good for a mass-produced sauce. It's not too watery compared to some of the other sauces, and it's not. What they didn't do that a lot of other places with their mass-produced sauces do is it's not vinegary. Some places have their sauce way too vinegary. Anyway, so like I used to go to Chuck E. Cheese a lot. Chuck E. Cheese is probably one of the biggest things from my childhood that I just really loved. We did go to a few that had animatronics, but they were never actually working. They never did shit at all. They just sat there, which I guess is probably for the best, because I'm not actually terrified of the animatronics from FNAF.
But also, by the way, rip Chuck E. Cheese.
It's still around. It just went in bankrupt. There's still locations. It's like
It's
Blockbuster.
still around.
It'll
It's
still
just a hollow shell of its former self.
one will still survive. Let
Or
there
rather,
be one.
a hollow animatronic.
I mean, there's still.
I'd rather there be a hollow animatronic than a full animatronic, if you know what I mean.
There's still a couple blockbusters, and they've gone out of business. So
There's one, maybe two. So that's what I hope that at least happens with Chuck E. Cheese, is that some survive. Some of the biggest ones, and or some of the like earliest, oldest ones. Chuck E. Cheese history, by the way, is fascinating, which kind of inspired a lot of what I'm gonna go with forward with Petunia's Pizza Palisade, which is that it's connected very heavily to a video game company that is going to become more and more important as my stories go on.
because apparently one of the co-founders of was it Atari founded Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah. One of the two co-founders of Atari was one of the two co-founders of Chuck E. Cheese, and that's just really fascinating to me because it really makes a lot of sense. It gives this really clear timeline of how it worked, and it started a little before Chuck E. Cheese, and then they came up with Chuck E. Cheese because they got the wrong suit. They tried to order a suit of like a cat or something, and it turned out to be a fucking rat. And the people, it's really funny because like the people were like, nobody's gonna buy food from a fucking rat, and the guy was like, oh, just send it out, it'll be fine, and it worked out.
These are the pre-Ratatouille times.
Yeah. Oh, I love Ratatouille. Anyway, so as you can see from the picture, Petunia is way more terrifying than I imagined her to be. She's meant to be this really motherly figure, but I suppose when she's resting, she might still be looking as motherly as she did in my imagination, and she looks just scarier when she's roaming. The other animatronic...
You also paid for the art. You could always have the artist change it, but, you know...
She gave me a rush job. I thought that the podcast would be last week when I bought these, and I knew she couldn't get them done in time by then, so I didn't try to rush her and tell her when it was due or anything. I thought it was fine. Then I was like, yesterday, do you think, because she gave me a sketch, I was like, do you think you'll get this done by like 6 o'clock tomorrow? And she was like, no. And so I'm like, okay, that's fine. And then she rushed me the entire thing. So I'm not asking for any changes. This works out really well. Golden Token looks hilarious. I really love this design for Golden Token. The brown and the gold really work well together, and his cutie mark is really funny because, like, with just like the POS face, the :V POS face is just great. Anyway, so the other animatronic there on the screen is the one that he gets stuffed into, and that's the hamster animatronic. And that was kind of inspired by one of my favorite things when I was a kid is these tubes, and I really wanted that to play into the story. So what I had is that Golden Token's thing is that he likes the tubes, and he went into the tubes, and then he dies in the tubes, and he becomes one with the tubes. And I figured a hamster animatronic would work really well for the tubes. For obvious reasons. I love the tubes. The tubes are always great. I want an adult version of the tubes.
I mean, you can always just go to like one of those like McDonald's with the playpins or
they're too small. They're made for children. I want an adult version of the tubes, made for adults, so that we can fit in the tubes.
And not have to worry about kid grossness, like vomit. You will have to worry about a lot of vomit in there, though. You know you will, because if there is a place that has adult tubes, that place is serving so much fucking beer. Yeah. You know it is.
I was immediately thinking of like Dave and Buster's. That would be the forefront of the adult.
Could you imagine a Dave and Buster's with the tubes? That would be fucking awesome.
I'd be all over that. That would be sick. And old arcade games from like the 90s that the Zoomers don't care about. Oh, yeah.
I would love that so much. And I love the tubes. And I love the arcade games. And at the very end, it's kind of hinted that the next character will also die. And he will become the mascot for the arcade games. Because he's a video game kid.
And so
it's kind of...
Oh, sorry.
Huh?
No, you
Go ahead.
interrupted. Continue.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I was gonna say, in my mind, I'm like, oh, Bit Chaser. He's probably related to Golden Token's sister that he just abandons at some random settlement.
See, I wasn't imagining it being that long, but frankly, there's no sense of time. So it genuinely could be that long. It could be a generation later or more.
I just like how
The other thing.
Like, his sister is important for like the first 2-3 paragraphs of the story. Then he just abandons her at some place.
I thought it was at first when I started reading it. I thought it was implied that like the people he left her with turned out to be cannibals and just needed another meal or something. I thought that was happening, and I was like, "Oh, this is a messed up story."
Oh, that is way darker than I imagined.
I mean, that's what you get when you just leave your sibling with some random folks that seem like nice ponies in the wasteland.
Yeah, no. So, no. The intention, really, when I had her, was that he actually really did care for his sister, and he really loved her and everything, and he just was kind of that kind of like 10-year-old like kick the floor. I don't. That kind of character, you know what I mean? Like that was the intention, and the idea for him at that point is that he gave her up to these people because it's what's best for her.
I mean,
and so like it was meant to be this really kind of bittersweet like ending to their relationship, and I did not give it justice because I had 1,000 fucking words. By the way, I'm the only person who decided every one of them to make my stories to be exactly 1,000 words, and then Comic ruined it.
They were 1,000 words, and then I did some cursory editing for you, and ended up some repeated lines were removed, and some grammar was changed, and now they're not 1,000 words. I'm sorry.
The other thing, the one thing that I do miss, which I had at the beginning of the story, but it didn't really fit into the style, is this one explanation that I really wanted to have. And that is, it just went, branding was really important before the war. A brand could keep its image, and people would understand exactly what it was from its branding. Branding would allow people to recognize what something was and always know exactly what it would be when they went there. Branding still exists in the wasteland. Some brands continue to be useful. Some brands continue to be terrifying. And then it was kind of a reference to the idea of Pony Joe's in Blackjack's place and stuff like that, where it's this
always a raider hangout for some reason.
Yeah, always a raider hangout, and the idea is that it's because branding is continued into the wasteland, and like some places, and I'm gonna have this show up in my story because it makes a lot of sense for the specific story, and that is some places will always be X.
Yeah,
if there's like let's say there's a 7-Eleven equivalent, every single one of those 7-Eleven equivalents will be turned into a base or like a outpost of like traders or something like that. You know what I mean? Every single one, you will know what to expect.
Yeah, I had similar. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead.
It's hard to find a cut-in for this. I had a similar cut exposition about Marispa Hut and all that kind of stuff. I went into like a lot of detail about like a pony named Douglas Fur who owned the CMC huts and all this kind of stuff. But then I'm like, this is over 1,000 words. Cut.
Yeah, basically that's what I ended up doing. The other thing, the idea was, like, I wanted that to be explained because I feel like that's something that is really interesting in the Wasteland. And then I went into it and I put it on its head because Petunia's Pizza Palisade is a brand everybody knows you don't go into. Everyone knows you never go into one of those locations. They're scattered all around the area, but you don't go there. And that's why it's the cleanest, the nicest, and completely unscavenged. Because you don't go there, because the people that go there don't come back.
But I mean, if you
And
you can have endless pizza for the rest of your life.
Pizza is tasty.
Yeah. Golden Token definitely did have endless pizza for the rest of his life. But yeah, no. So these two characters, Golden Token or whatever his name is after he becomes a hamster, it might just stay Golden Token. Hamster is adorable, by the way. Still, I really think she captured how cute that hamster is. Look at its little tail. Anyway, Golden Token and Cuddle Bunny, they will probably show up, and they're an introduction to ideas that I will make use of in the future. And so I feel like that's important, and I thought it was a good use of this structure. And now I'm done, and I'm done for the rest of the podcast for my stories, at least until we get done talking about this and start bullshitting.
We can talk about the story that didn't make the cut.
You're right. I will talk about the story that got cut when we're done, because that's going to be hilarious.
Okay, so Message Repeats is my next story.
I love that one.
That one...
Don't forget to take off the image.
I did. Message Repeats is the only story that has made it through all versions of Chilling Wasteland Stories to Tell in the Dark. I initially wanted it to be like an actual like written story where like a group of adventurers or a traveling caravan was wandering into a location or wandering towards a location, I believe the settlement of like Hollowed Hollow or something like that. And they enter into a location that also will play a part in later stuff, like the Mystery Spot. It's mentioning that place in Oregon that is like called the Mystery Spot, and the place like that inspired Gravity Falls and that kind of stuff. It's a place that just is a weird attractor. And one of the weird things about it is you normally, under normal circumstances, can't pick up any radio signals. However, if you're wandering there at night, you will get one repeating message that changes every time it repeats, but it is still clearly a recorded message. And so the idea but I couldn't figure out how to write that as an actual story. And at some point, I guess kind of inspired by Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven, it ended up more like Shel Silverstein meets Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven, because has some slant rhymes and such, and it's a decent poem. I wouldn't say it's a masterpiece. But I ended up turning it into a poem with the sort of idea being the poem you're hearing is one of those repeating messages. Because Message Repeats is repeated 3 times throughout the poem, because, rule of threes. 2 times by the narrator, and then 1 time by a text-to-speech. It's like, in the morning, the voice will cease. Beware the broadcast. And then automated voice, message repeats. And for some reason, no matter how many times I hear it, or whatever from Loonies, and with all the added effects I put on it, it actually kind of gives me chills. Like that one line, in the morning the voice will cease, beware the broadcast, and then it says message repeats. It gives me chills, and even though I wrote it, so maybe I'm biased, but that's the coolest part about that one. Because there is a lot of strange broadcasts out in the waste, a lot of them being those message repeats, and so what if some supernatural serial killer kind of thing ends up killing you if you listen to this broadcast? So don't wander through the Mystery Spot at night, or you'll be never seen again. It was probably the shortest of all the stories. It was the only poem, so that's all I have to say about it. And now the penultimate story, the final one written by Skybolt, that of all the ones that weren't mine, was my favorite, mostly because of the subtle connection to Confessions.
Yeah. So this was another thing I was, I would try to keep all of our East Corp stories correlated in, at least one side of the universe kind of way. So I thought, okay, of my 3 stories, I should have one that a little bit explicitly connects. So I thought this would be a fun way to do it, where you have and another thing of I was in the middle of a New Vegas playthrough also, and I'm like, what are the kinds of people that become couriers in the wasteland, where your whole life is just carrying stuff between places rather than hunting or running a store or any number of other things. And I thought, competition, that seems like a great kind of personality. Like, someone, rather than being like always chasing the next, like, Olympic trophy or whatever, what if they're always competing with someone else to be the fastest delivery man? And so then I thought, okay, well, what's the best way of doing that is with brothers. And so you have Pack and Satchel, these go-getters who are so devoted to their lifelong competition that they are easily exploited by Papa Smokey, to have a cheap rate on running packages around the Manhattan area of the wasteland. And then of course we have our subtle confessions reference of some gray arrows come in, and they want to move some computer parts on the down low, because a lot of their parts have been disappearing recently because of certain characters, which they end up running into in the story as well.
Yeah, that was a cool reference. Like, I was listening to your recordings, and I'm like, wait, is that totally is? It's great.
Yeah, it was fun to pull out the old filter setup too with the robotic voice. So that was fun.
Anything else you want to say about that?
Not real. I mean, go listen to Confessions of Wasteland Pony episode 8, The Red Reaper, if you want to know more. It's just 5 hours, no big deal.
The Red Reaper shows up in more than just the Red Reaper.
That is true. If you want the full story, you actually have to start with episode 5, The Ranger, and then it's just 25 hours.
Take a day and some change.
Yeah. And ironically,
you can always
it's still
listen
not
to
in
it.
the top 20 in length of FOE stories.
You can listen to it at accelerated speed. I always do.
Yeah, whatever works.
I never listen to audiobooks at normal speed anymore. It just feels really weird. People talk so fucking slow in audiobooks. Oh my god. And so I have to calculate how many hours I have left with multiplying it by the speed, and it's just really complicated all the time.
Okay, so
but
the Stranger,
it works out.
The Stranger, the final story that is also the final moments of the life of the listener. As in the meta, you get killed after that.
Rip.
Which kind of makes it hard to do this again with the Stranger, the ghoulified chimera character again, because the secret's out that he is that he. So it would be, if I were to do it again, I'd probably do something less meta related requirements and just make it like the DJ Pone 3, one of them throughout the years is hosting some kind of anthology. But oddly enough, would still have Strike voicing it a little bit, because Strike's our DJ Pone 3.
Hello.
But
it's a lot of work for us, huh?
But
it's a lot of work for you, Shrike.
You
ready for that?
Anyways,
I'm ready.
Sorry, I'll let you finish.
Oh no, I was trying to think of a joke, but it didn't come to mind, so it just I slowly died down the volume as I said the words.
Okay. So,
that is a joke.
So basically, when I was coming up with the idea back when this was going to be sort of a choose your own adventure, if you listen to enough of the stories, he doesn't kill you, and then if you don't, then you get the story of the Stranger as your death, basically. Ended up cutting that to be far too complicated, and I was the only editor
you cut
that was available. So basically, I knew that I wanted to have it be like an anthology series, but having the storyteller series exist, where predominantly Forrest McGilvray, the voice of the storyteller, is predominantly like giving exposition dumps and more or less telling stories for every episode of that series. I didn't want another mini series that was just one voice doing all of the voiceovers. I wanted to have multiple people, but how would that work with a meeting a stranger out in the wasteland on Nightmare Night, and then what if they had 3 heads and they were a chimera? And so it was never revealed because I couldn't figure out how to actually do it in the actual series. But the chimera actually had a name, and it was Lovecraft, King, and Poe. Very obvious references to H.P. Lovecraft, Edgar Allan Poe, and Stephen King. And with Strike being Lovecraft, Skybolt being King, and Looney being Poe. And Poe is the snake. King is the... I believe we ended up making it... what was it? I think it was a... forget what animal it was.
Which one?
The goat
Which
animal.
one?
The goat animal.
Antelope.
Antelope, yes.
Sweet.
King is the antelope head, which was Skybolt, and then the mountain lion?
Snow leopard.
Snow leopard. I thought it was a mountain lion. Anyways,
Is it a mountain lion?
I think it was a mountain lion.
We were gonna go with snow leopard.
I think originally we were gonna go with just the three animals that existed for the for the one from the show, but then you're like, now let's divert from that. It was gonna be the one from the show, but now let's make it a member of that species instead. And it was.
I honestly can't.
And so that allowed us to have 3 different narrators because there's 3 different heads, and they all would have different voices, and then I needed a bad ending, and so I have the narrator tell his own story, which is also sort of it's in itself sort of like a classic ghost story of someone that only appears on one night. Who knows where he goes on those other nights? I mean, he is a ghoul, so he doesn't technically need to eat. So if he's killing this pony to eat them, I guess he only hunts on Nightmare Night. So it was just kind of like those, inspired by those ghost stories in which they only show up on one night, or through one set of circumstances, get their killing done. And for all you know, the stranger could be the person from Message Repeats. It could work out that way. But also he's a ghoul. But usually ghouls have a raspy voice or something like that. But before I decided that, Skybolt already sent his audio, and I didn't want to bother you by having you re-record it. And so I tried putting the normal filters I put on ghouls to give them an ethereal kind of voice, and it just didn't sound good. So I'm like, screw it. He's only a ghoul in art only. He's not going to be a ghoul for ease of listening for all the other ones. But yeah, so if Chalky wants to, you can talk about the story we ended up cutting from the 3 stories that you wrote.
Okay, so I'll tell the listeners a very short and very funny story. It all happened when several weeks ago, months even, I was told by Comic that I should do that we should do the thing, and that we're gonna do this thing, and I was like, I'll write stories. And I kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. Yeah, and then Comic gave a deadline, and I kept putting it off. And then I wrote all of my stories on the day of the deadline.
Actually, you missed the first deadline, and there was 7 stories, and I want more. So I talked to a few other authors and gave a new deadline of October 1st. And still didn't actually get any new stories. A lot of people forgot.
Anyway,
You
I wrote all my
You wrote it
stories.
on October 1st. You wrote it on like the day of the deadline for the second deadline.
Yeah, I wrote it the day before the deadline because I was like, okay, I'm gonna get all of these in by midnight. So the first one I wrote was Cuddle Bunny. I already had the story in my head. I knew what was gonna happen. It turned out all right. Second story I wrote, Possum Pizza. I had to rewrite that whole thing twice. I wrote it, and then I was like, nope, and wrote the whole thing over. Third one, Getting Late.
Writing is rewriting, so.
Third one, Getting Late. I grabbed the story, and I wrote this really strange bullshit story that was kind of based on Polybius and kind of based on like the old creepypasta character I had when I was younger. Like, that is a cringe OC, by the way. Great art, though, because I got given free art of him when I was a kid. So, cringy-ass thing. And I wanted to make a kind of character who was into, like, metal and horror movies and, like, video games. And then I had him be, like, in a basement, and he lived in his mother's basement, and he was doing shit around. And he found this arcade cabinet that was basically Polybius. And the whole story is just he tries to fix that cabinet, and then at the end, it blows up in his face and turns him into a fucking cryptid, weird serial killer monster.
Kind of.
And that's the story.
When I was reading that, it kind of reminded me like he was the virus character from the Scooby-Doo one where they go into the video game. Except purple and like black colored energy instead of being like blue. But that's what I pictured.
But yeah, no, so he was meant to become a slasher, like a slasher villain, and that was like the whole story, is that he just becomes a slasher and then haunts the fucking suburbs he used to live in. Real shitty story. If I had rewritten it from the beginning, I probably could have gotten something in. I decided not to. I just sent in that completely raw. I had literally just written it.
Including all the extensive grammatical and spelling errors.
And it was funny. I liked it, but it couldn't be edited in time or anything, so it was cut. Would have been a good story? Maybe. We'll find out.
Hey, maybe next year.
Probably not.
If I can organize this next year and maybe actually remember to ask James Vermont if he was interested. I typed out. I asked Skybolt, and like I was typing out the same question to ask James, and like either I didn't send it or he didn't see it. So,
Revenants.
That's why only Skybolt was asked.
That story probably will never see the light of day. However, Revenants, which is what the character would be, which is basically a special type of, it's kind of like a ghoul but a little bit like stronger because it has it's a slasher villain, unkillable, always comes back, always moves slowly towards you if it wants to kill you, etc., etc. Classic slasher villain. That was the intention. Those might come back. That story, definitely not coming back. Just not happening.
I mean, the implications of Polybius existing in My Little Pony, it's definitely definitely a Ministry of Morale thing to do.
Oh yeah, no, it was. In the story, it was a Ministry of Morale experiment. It was basically the standard Polybius story, which is that it's a part of MK Ultra, which just makes sense for Ministry of Morale. LSD testing on ponies sounds like a Ministry of Morale thing, doesn't it? Yeah, so that might come back, and the slasher thing will probably come back, but the
story itself is going into the NHS vault and never returning.
Oh yes, we need to have an NHS vault like the Disney vault, and we just like release things in 10 years, on 100 years, on this day in 100 years it will be released.
And then we put it back in the vault.
forever until another 100 years have passed.
Yeah, we'll just constantly make things private and then public on on YouTube.
We'll have a fucking whatchamacallit, like a scheduled bot that makes things unprivate and then private again, like far after we're dead, and it'll just be a fucking 100-year long mystery.
Anyways, well that's Chilling Wasteland Stories to Tell in the Dark. The background and inspiration from for each story in the anthology, and maybe we'll do one next year. Even more scary stories to tell in the wasteland, or something like that.
Hey, Comic.
Yeah.
Mom, I'm tell you to tell them about the story that I submitted that didn't get a cut.
Oh yeah. Yours was third person, but it was present tense.
Yeah. So when you gave me that, it was about like the beginning of the month, right?
And you said you weren't really a writer, so I
wasn't really a writer.
I didn't even think you'd give a story, but you did.
Yeah, but I did. Because, like, I'm not really a writer, but I'll give it a shot. So I write a story, and you never gave me a date. You never gave me any information of it, really. But I was like, okay, you want a scary story. So I'll give him a scary story. So I work until... well, I put it off till, like, the last minute, because I asked him, like, hey, is there a deadline to this? He's like, yeah, it's October 1st, which was, like, 4 days away. I was like, oh, shit. Oh, if I could say that.
Yeah.
And
we've been dropping Chalkfeed dropped the F-bomb a few times. So
okay, good fuckers. All right, so as I'm making the story, I was like, okay, what I'm gonna do? I got an idea. I'll do a story about the Griffins, since people don't really write about Griffins a lot. And it'll be around the time when they got their annex from like their home by the Enclave. So they're obviously in the waste and they need supplies. Like, what's the best place to get supplies for a Griffins? Who are trying to get their society back up? A hospital. What hospital do they find? The Fluttershy Hospital. The one that has the hospital horrors in it.
Oh, so the one that's in Old Olney?
Yeah. And this is what they would be looting, because it's this hospital has all the shit they need, and this would be the first time anyone really sees them. So as they get in there, it's a group of 3. They find them. Obviously they're attacked as per slasher monster movie. But the main character, gets their ears blown out because of a sudden gunshot that was too close. So they can't hear anything after a certain point. And as they go through, they lose their team, the 2 others that were with them. But you know how even though if you lose your hearing, you can still like feel vibrations. They hide in a closet, medical closet, from the hospital horrors, and they're just knocking for hours on end until they finally can't take it anymore and kill themselves. But as they kill themselves, the locker finally opens, and it was like, I believe it was Steel Rangers, but it was the Steel Rangers or reinforcements. Because they called for help before they got to this point. So all they had to do was wait a bit more before going insane.
And that would explain why there were the dead Steel Rangers when little Pip gets there.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, okay. And that's how they got in there. Okay. So when it's like, sir, we got there, but they just ended themselves, and then they continued on that day. And that was my story. That unfortunately I didn't know it was a campfire story, so it didn't.
Yeah, a few of the people I failed to give them the correct information because this project changed form a few times, and so now if we do a sequel to this next year, I now kind of know what I'm looking for, and I also might make tweaks to it to allow for first person stories that are stories that aren't, so they're not all like past tense third person, like maybe find some other way to kind of allow for other types of scary stories to kind of broaden the scope of it, I guess, or not, and I'll just go with something similar.
Next time we'll have to start production earlier with more recording time for the recorders.
Yes. That definitely was a mistake. I figured because I had like 2-3 months before Halloween, month, I made sure that the original deadline was like a month or two before Halloween, and that's when I had my stories written, and that's when, except for I think maybe Message Repeats, Marispa Hut, or no, the one that was spawned by Dice Works story, inspired by.
But literally the only one that you did not just mention.
Oh yeah, one signature.
You had 3. There are 3 options here, because it can't be the last one, because that was written along with the first. The last story isn't really a story. I know you frame it as a story, but it's really just a conclusion. It's like the beginning. It's not a story. I don't know why you think it. Why it counts as a story.
I wanted it to.
But it doesn't, though.
That's pretty much it. But yeah, so
So that's it for your regularly scheduled podcast.
I mean, if anyone has anything else they want to promote, wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah, so this is the time where we basically start bullshitting and talking about Fallout Equestria until all of us slowly decide to leave and trickle away. And then when that happens, we will end the call.
Well, if no one's going to say it, hi, from Dead Tree Studios. We'll soon release our NPC book for free.
Also,
Speaking of which,
you should totally check out from Dead Tree Studios. They're Dames of Equestria, not Astoria, not Equestria.
Dames of Equestria. That's the next project. Don't worry about that.
That would make a kind of fun crossover little supplement.
Sorry, Dames of Astoria.
Yes, Must Go RPG.
Yes.
Yeah.
For all your waifu making needs. We're not. Well, we are partnered with Dead Tree, but this podcast is not currently sponsored by Dead Tree, as far as I'm aware.
It could be. It could be, but not technically.
So any
technically, we're sponsored by exactly one person. Still.
Well, there's our Patreons. You can support Nuclear Horseman Studios on Patreon.
This episode was brought to you by viewers like you.
I was going to make the same joke.
So, anything you want to promote, Skybolt, from East Corp?
I guess East Corp. This year we finished Confessions of Wasteland Pony. It was pretty fun. We are hopefully finishing Wasteland Survival Guide soon. We do have the ending in the works right now, as well as maybe a few other stuff in the middle. But and then I should probably mention too, over at Shotgun Angel Productions, we have the Dead Tree, the story Fallout Equestria Dead Tree audiobook rolling out. So
which is a very convoluted. Which, if the listeners do not know, that is a very complicated story as to how that exists.
Yeah,
one that we will not get into, but it's basically a Fallout story in and of itself, like one of the background stories you find about corporate espionage, where it's like 5 different levels of different groups interacting in crazy manners.
Because it's the audiobook version of the written version of the tabletop RPG based on Fallout Equestria.
It's the audiobook. Technically, it's the audiobook version of the printed version of the fan fiction version of the recorded test podcast version of the Dead Tree pen and paper game.
Wait, but is the printed version and the
printed
version, are they different?
Has been edited more, and the audiobook is based on the printed version because it's been edited more.
Oh.
That's true. It's very iterative.
Yeah,
it's funny. It's like when you try to explain how Fallout Equestria works to people who have no idea about it, and it's like, so this is a fandom where everybody writes fan fictions of fan fictions of fan fictions of a specific fan fiction, and then that fan fiction is basically in and of itself a combination of 2 official fan fictions of of previous works, which is basically because Friendship is Magic is basically an official fan fiction of the original My Little Pony, and Fallout is basically a fan fiction of earlier Fallout / Wasteland, which was the original game that it was based on, and it's just so many levels of just.
I actually have examples of trying to explain this to customers because I'm listening to the audiobook while I'm at work. 'Cause I work the evening shift when there's literally nothing to do.
Oh yeah.
So when a person comes in, until they come up to the counter, I'm still playing the story, so they don't really hear what it actually is. But then sometimes so then when they come up, I pause it and like, oh, what are you listening to? And usually I try to play it off like, oh, it's just an audiobook. And like, an audiobook of what? I'm like, well, you see.
Get ready for 15 minutes of explanation.
I thought you were going to take that in the direction of you were playing it over like the speakers in the store, and I'm like, are they all just listening to fucking what's his name, Crazed Rambling in the store?
That is
like
what I do.
We don't have a radio sound system like that. I just listen to it on my phone, and I actually prefer I think that they now call their channel Pony and Wolf Productions, but it was formerly Visual Pony Production. It's Visual Pony and his fiance Midnight 25, or I forget her username.
She's a great person, by the way. They
did a great job.
Cafe. She's great to talk to.
Because the first time I listened to Fallout Equestria was the Crazed Rambling version, and after listening to Visual Pony's version,
I still think you should try.
I like how every character there's an attempt to have every character have a different voice.
I still think you should listen to the Manhattan edition, which is the edited version. It's a remastered version of the original Crazed Rambling cut, and it works. It is probably the best one out there, in my opinion. I don't like having the same voice for different characters. Sometimes it just feels weird to me if they're too close. Like how I can never listen to the weird version of Harry Potter that some people like, because I will always remember the Jim Dale version. Hi, I'm Jim Dale, the narrator of the Harry Potter audiobooks. Audiobooks are great for young readers, and so on and so on.
That's my problem with the Game of Thrones audiobooks too. I'm too used to the TV voices, so the one guy who's done all those books, it's just like, it weirds me out. It's not the same.
Yeah. It'll be like that for a while. I will continue to have the Crazed Rambling version. I wish there was a good different version of Pink Eyes, but sadly the recordings on the other versions are all a little bit buggy, so the best produced version of Pink Eyes is from Pony and Wolf, but at least it has 2 voice actors in it, with both of the people being in it. And then, obviously, Project Horizon will always be...
Shock and Angel, I think Cinder mentioned that she wants to make that one as well.
They tried to do it, and then they might try to do it again, but it's going to start all the way over, and it'll be crazy stuff. And that one's going to be real weird.
I'm still way out of the loop on that official Fallout Equestria audiobook too. The one that got like $40,000 on GoFundMe or whatever.
Didn't people just like run away with the?
Anyway, there always seems to be some weird curse about trying to adapt Fallout Equestria into a big production.
Yeah, there's never been a good full adaptation. Like an adaptation, it's only been audiobooks. And then, like, that's it.
Well, yeah, because so the official audiobook, I don't know when the last time we heard about any production on anything right from that, and the other big production was Stable Tech Studios. So.
Which we made a documentary about this year, if anyone's interested.
That's pretty good.
And then it's really funny to me because I feel like, so I was watching the podcast from Shotgun Angel the other day, actually, like a few weeks ago, and that was, they were talking about the big fix for Fallout Equestria, and it's just really funny to me to see that interpretation of what makes a big fix, because I've always heard just that you have to have a unique page on Equestria Daily.
Which is why
And that's it.
If Confessions of a Wasteland Pony was a written fic, it probably would count as a big fic.
I know. That kills me still to this day.
Yeah.
Hey, I made the section on the side fics page on the wiki to include audio dramas because there wasn't a section.
I appreciate it. Yeah, that was the biggest dopamine release I had all year, was moving Confessions to the completed radio play stories. Oh my god.
Oh, and it was like one of the only ones on there because like there's
that's true. The other one's
the
Terminal
only ones
Secrets,
are
which
from-
I'm
You see, like,
co-writer of.
And there's qualifications for that. Like, it has to be an original work within the Fallout Equestria series that does not have any other written version of it. So, Chilling Wasteland Stories to Tell in the Dark doesn't count, because I have a written version of it that I posted to FimFiction.
Oh, interesting.
It
I didn't
doesn't-
realize that.
I made the stipulation that it has to not have an additional written version of it. Although I didn't specify. I mean, there might be, because I made the section, so I made, like, the requirements, so I mean, I guess I could just say it counts, because who's gonna stop me?
Because I said though.
That's all corruption.
But yeah, no. So like that, I feel like there's some changes there. I think it needs to be produced originally for audio format. Sadly, that still won't catch in your audio file series, even though they were written for audio format.
Yeah.
Speaking of the audio file series, we finally finished re-uploading, with permission, the unscrewed audio files, and are working on casting the sequel.
Yeah,
Which
should go well.
I will point out, though, for anyone who does like Confessions but doesn't like audiobooks or whatever, part of our, we released the bonus features package, which includes fully edited scripts of every episode. So if you want to just
by
read
the way,
it
that
in
package
sort
is
of prose
gigantic.
format.
That package, when you download it, was like a fourth of my computer. It is
Yeah.
huge. It is like 20 gigabytes.
there's a lot
It
of really
includes
cool things in
images
there.
as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of really cool things,
Yeah.
like all the different images from the videos, the concept art.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in there. I just had to delete it because my computer was chugging.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing about the big fix is that Fiora there were 3 requirements, and apparently she's heard this from some of the people who work at the who do stuff on the wiki and kind of moderate the wiki. That there are 3 requirements, and that those 3 requirements are that A, they need to be they need that stuff from the thing.
They need to have a dedicated page tracking its progress on EQD, an audiobook
Yes.
version, and a printed version.
She didn't say there has to be an audiobook version. There just has to be a printed version, and and the characters need to be instantly recognizable, as in they can't just look generic. Which those last 2, frankly, I feel like some of those characters kind of do look generic. Have you seen Murky? He kind of does look generic.
It's sort of an appeal to popularity, where it's like, you know, they're recognizable because enough people know about it. Basically.
Yeah,
So,
like Dead Tree, I get those characters are so out there that they're instantly recognizable.
Yeah.
The original Fallout Equestria characters and Project Horizons characters and Pink Eyes characters, all of them are super recognizable. The other big fix.
I like the point of contention that Blackjack is only recognizable because she is so generic.
I see. I don't think Blackjack is generic. I feel like at least not for a Wasteland pony, because the Wasteland ponies are usually drab colors. She is bright colors, except for parts of her mane.
She's Fallout Equestria with
The only
Blackjack and
drab
Liquor.
character is Little Pip, and that's by design because K-Cat originally didn't have a description, and so she wanted Little Pip to be a generic character, and a lot of the designs of Little Pip that people created had that kind of genericness to her. The original, there were 2 main ones, which is the one we all know, which is the gray and brown, which is super fucking generic when you really think about it in the Fallout Equestria universe, because it's just drab colors. There's no bright colors there except for her cutie mark and all that. And then there's the white version, white coated version.
White, black mane, I think like pink or red eyes.
So yeah, that's also generic, ish, but not as generic. So actually, that might have, probably what cut that out is Blackjack. When you think about it, probably Blackjack becoming popular is what cut out that version of.
Well, especially because of that one crossover chapter.
Especially because with the crossover chapter, she confirmed the version that we all know in the Project Horizons universe.
Yeah, because there's no way the crossover chapter could exist without describing Little Pip.
Yeah, it would just be really.
My favorite version of Little Pip is the standard, accepted version, but with the Applejack freckles. With that little subtle implication of apple lineage. I just always like the freckles. Yeah. I think they're cute.
Well, freckles are always cute.
Yeah. No, I always wondered who the first person to draw a Little Pip with the brown hair, green eyes, color scheme was.
I always assumed
it's based
Little
on a
Pip
Pip
is...
book. Like the green eyes are the green eyes and green magic are the screen. The gray is a couple shades lighter of the gray color of the Pip book, and then the brown is like the leather straps.
By the way, this is a thing that isn't always used in art, but I personally love this. And it was a detail that was in the original show and then kind of got dropped out later on. That is that the eyes and magic color, 1, they match with each other, and 2, they match with a part of your cutie mark. They match with one of the main color of your cutie mark. And that, I love that. I feel like that makes everything, is really visually interesting. It makes everything a lot better. But that really only matters if you're a unicorn, so... But the eyes, the cutie mark thing, I feel like that's important, and that's why even after Blackjack's eyes turned amber, but I think before her eyes were supposed to be red.
Her eyes are red. They glow amber. Her eyes are still red.
Yeah. So because her eyes are red, that is matching the hearts / is it hearts or diamonds, or is it one heart and one diamond?
She has a winning hand on her flank. I don't know what it's supposed to be. I can't remember.
Well, it's a blackjack. It's an ace and a thing, I think.
I think it's an ace and a queen.
Yeah. That makes sense.
She's the queen.
I think it's a hearts and a diamond, but I might be wrong. Anyway,
I don't remember either.
It might just be left up to interpretation, but I think it was described in one of the chapters, because I'm re-listening to Project Horizons now, because I need to actually listen to the end of it, because I never got to the end, because I caught up with Visual Pony, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to go listen to Heroes now, and then forgot about it.
I've gotten there twice, almost 3 times, I think. The only thing I don't like about the ending is the epilogue that skips ahead another 200 years and haphazardly ships Blackjack and Little Pip for reasons that are not important.
Oh yeah, I've heard that's kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, sure, maybe it would take another 200 years to have enough of the technology for Blackjack to use Little Pip's telekinesis, basically, to propel them back to the moon to save Rampage. But I mean, spoiler alert, sorry.
Hot.
But it's
like... Someone who hasn't watched, I had no clue what you said, honestly.
Because,
spoiler.
A lot of it's in the, it's like they set in motion that there's obviously there'll be the Lunar Commonwealth and the NCR, and apparently some war with some ghoul dragons called the Radworms. Apparently hellhounds through many generations of de-evolution from a monstrous form become hell dogs again. It's a lot of weird stuff. So I don't like the epilogue of Project Horizons, but everything else is, it does jump the metaphorical star spirit, but it's a fun ride.
Anyway, the main thing I wanted to say is that I feel like having an audiobook version is more important than having a printed version. Because you know what would technically count as a mainfic under those restrictions? Duck and Cover.
Yep.
Really?
Because it has its own page. Technically, the page is only about the printing, but it does have its own page on Equestria Daily. has a printed version, and it is completely recognizable. So, I'm just saying.
Adam Smasher is pretty recognizable. Fluorescent green hair and orange coat, and the symbol for the generic symbol of like an atom on her I think flank. And she uses a Nerf gun that apparently still can kill ponies because
They explode sometimes.
yeah. Back many conversations ago, when I mentioned I'm listening to Project Horizons and other stuff at work, so people ask, like, "Oh, it's an audiobook. Like, what audiobook is it?" And I'm like, "Well, so you know the video game franchise Fallout? No, I don't really know video games. So there's a video game franchise called Fallout. It's about post-apocalyptic United States, as if like the Cold War timeline had not been so cold." There's more distinctions than that, but I usually just go with that.
It's very complicated if you really want to explain.
And then Generation 4 of the Hasbro franchise, My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic, combined. So it's post-apocalyptic Technicolor horses. And I even had one customer say that they were going to look it up. I'm like, with that description, good luck.
That's a rabbit hole.
It's not a good description of it, but
That is a rabbit hole.
Well, they'll Google Fallout Equestria, and then something not safe for work's going to pop up, and that'll be its own.
I actually never explicitly say it's called Fallout Equestria, so they don't even know the name of it. I'm just thinking, good luck looking it up.
That's good. Boomer filter.
But no,
Skybolt mentioned he has to go soon, so I mean, we can end the podcast, I guess.
We don't have to end the podcast. We can keep shooting the shit. Although, Skybolt,
yes.
Before you go, I just wanted to say, and I'm sure I say this for Comic too, if you ever want to hop in around here, you can stick around or you can leave. But if you ever want to do anything, like with us of any kind, you are completely, like, you're on the short list of people who can just be like, hey, do this thing for me, or hey, I want to say hi and put a thing in your thing, and then we'll just be like, okay. There's a short list of people who could be like, hey, I've written an entire episode of your story that has nothing to do with what you've done so far, and we'd just be like, okay, we're gonna put that in now. Thank you.
Well, I mean, it might be a little more involved than just, I guess we'll throw it in, but yeah.
Yeah, but like, you know what I mean. Like, there's a short list of people that we would accept to just do whatever they wanted, and I feel like Skybolt's on that list.
Yeah,
and
it was actually funny when I wanted to message Skybolt to be at this podcast. I realized I wasn't friends with you on Discord. I'm like, I don't know if I should add him as a friend, and then I'm like, wait a second, I'm already friends with James Vermont. How am I not friends with Skybolt?
Yeah, I it's weird with Discord. I don't pay attention to the list so much. I'll just check and see if there's updates. Like, oh, you need to record this for a song. Like, okay, I'll get to it as soon as I can. Stuff like that. So I apologize if I'm not the best on messaging. I have a very busy job too. I'm always doing.
It was just kind of funny.
At home technical stuff.
I was like, I wasn't sure if I should add Skybolt as a friend, and it's like, but then I just happened to just not have thought about it, just added James as a friend, so I was like, might as well have Skybolt as well.
No, it's fine. YOLO.
But yeah, no. If you ever want to, Skybolt, you can hop in here any day.
Yeah, I've given you specific permissions in this server for the role of I think East Corp. So you so we already had the Dead Tree invasion, so I guess we'll also have the East Corp invasion.
Yay!
So if you come in and you see us in a podcast, you can pop in.
Yeah, you can. We'll give you permissions of the whatchamacallits as well.
Dead Tree.
Thanks. No, I was thinking of the Patreons. Like, basically, you can pop in.
Probably, yeah. There also will eventually be a storyteller episode where the storyteller tries to cohesively put together the story of East Corp, and definitely has his work cut out for him.
Oh, sweet. I'm always happy to consult. We've already had other fanfic writers ask me a lot of questions, and I try to answer them as best as I can.
Yeah, I asked you a bunch of questions. I remember that much. and then I never use that information.
That's fine.
I think I figured out that it would be that the storyteller would be, for some reason, spoiler alert, I guess, visiting something that turns out to be like an East Corp warehouse, maybe one of those military bunkers or something, and that's the prompt for him expositing about it. And I kind of
Yeah, no, that was the fun part of the conclusion, was having enough sort of open things where it's like I could go back to the story down the road if I wanted. So, you know, it's fun.
I think at least all the main stories I know of always add elements to FOE where people can, like, either they can come back and get into it, or other people can come back and get into it. Project Horizons added, Project Horizon stuff, as well as the Zebra Tribes.
Yeah, there's actually there's a fic that I'm currently writing called Wasted Miracles that takes place, I think, 35 years after Little Pip. And it was initially inspired by something mentioned in that aforementioned epilogue that I don't like from Project Horizons regarding some explosion in Junction City or something like that. And I still ran with that as being the prompt, but like it doesn't fit with the timeline, so screw it. Still has
Blackjack
Boo,
is even
Boo
more of
up,
an unreliable narrator than anyone else.
I can still have Boo show up as the mysterious Mare-do-well in that story, so you know.
There you go.
I actually contacted Somber and No One and asked if I could use their characters in my story. So that was kind of cool to get the response of yes, go ahead, knock yourself out. So
we need to make that list of characters who are not dead.
Oh yeah.
By the way,
the casual. We have this whole list of people who are just casually immortal. Like they just, oh yeah, I guess I'm immortal now, kind of thing.
Casual.
Yeah,
it's a good list.
It's actually a really long list.
Surprise.
There's also a lot of them who are dead by the end of the stories that they're in, but.
Like, anyway, I do need to go, but I want to say thank you all for having me, and that was a lot of fun. I appreciate getting the chance to write for these. These were fun stories.
What would you want to do it next year, too?
I would be interested, for sure. Let me know when you guys start the planning.
Yeah. Have a wonderful night, Skybolt, and we'll probably see you in one of your podcasts. Like, we'll see you happening.
You all as well. I will talk to you all later.
Okay, bye.
Yeah, have a great night.
Adios. And now that everything's winding down now, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Conway Twitty.
You know, there's a bot on this server for easy listening.
I know, I just thought it'd be funny.
If you really want me to summon it to this call.
No.
Waited all night for that.
It's the rhythm bot that kind of plays music, but I renamed it DJ Pwn 3. But so
anyway, where were we in our conversation?
I don't remember. We kind of lost our train of thought.
Right. We were talking about the main fix. What I wanted to say, and I want to say this officially because I find it funny. I think that it's probably a more useful test to see if a fic has been turned into an audiobook and a fully done audiobook, because there aren't that many fully done audiobooks out there, except for really short stories and the main fic. There are not that many of the medium length stories that aren't important, like aren't the main fics. The only problem with that is so many of the main fics do not have full audiobooks.
Yeah. Yeah, I never mentioned. I said I'd mention it later, and I never got around to it. The reason I chose the minimum word count to the maximum word count for these for the short stories being 1K words, because if you have a story that's 1K words, and if for some reason it was disqualified from being included in the anthology, as long as you have 1K words, you can post that to FimFiction. So it's like. So a lot of the people who ended up their stories not really fitting the whole like campfire story vibe. I'm like, you should still revise and post it to FimFiction on your own, because that's why I chose 1K words. That's also to keep things short, because when it comes to horror stories, you don't need as much detail as you normally would in a Fall to Question fic.
Yeah. But yeah, no, like there is no full audiobook of Murky Number 7. I don't think there's a full audiobook of Guys of Chaos. I think there's one of the prequel of it.
Forrest
And
is
there's
making
definitely
a
not one of Better Days, but there is, I think, one for one of the other stories that is a prequel to Better Days.
Forrest, the person who's the voice of the storyteller, he's actually on his own channel. You should go check it out. I believe he changed it to like Equestrian Narrator. No, that's a different channel. He changed his name. It used to just be for his name, or at least his stage name. But I think he actually gave it like an actual title, like an actual channel. I forget what he calls it now. But I think if you still search like Forrest M or Forrest McGilvray, you're probably gonna find his channel anyways. Or I put the link in the description of all of the re-uploaded Unscrewed. But he is actually currently making his way slowly through an audiobook of Murky Number 7. So
yeah, it might take a while. He's a little bit busy these days, but I encourage him to continue beyond the current, beyond now and into the future. I encourage him to continue.
And if anyone who's still watching, I actually haven't checked the stream in a bit. I don't know if they're
I think it's literally just Dice who's been watching this whole time.
Oh, hey Dice.
He feels ignored.
What? Sorry.
No, you didn't miss anything, Dice. We're sorry. We ignored you.
Well, yeah, Skyboat left. I can remove the image can go away, I guess.
Sorry, I couldn't contribute much this one in this podcast.
But yeah, no, this was.
The art for each of the stories in the anthology was inspired by the actual art from the inspiration for the anthology itself. Like it's all the same artist. The regular the cover art and the individual story art stuff, same artist, but the cover art is more just their own style. But I gave them an example of a couple of stories from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark that actually have a black and white kind of sketch image to represent the story, and sometimes that could be quite obvious with, like, for example, like Party Time. It was a Party Time Mentos tin, but for Carry On, for those people who actually have listened to East Corp stuff, who would have probably caught on that it was going to involve a character from theirs. I told them more generic, a box of random computer parts, instead of going with the canon of it being actually East Corp terminal parts. So yeah, they turned out pretty good. They even though they do look like rough sketches, which that was the point, they definitely add to the feel.
The aesthetic.
The aesthetic, yes.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I really love Fallout Equestrian, and unless we decide to just end the podcast, I kind of want to just talk. But we could end the podcast and talk not on the podcast.
I mean,
if that's what you
that also could be a thing. Yeah, there needs to be more audiobooks, because I'll listen to Fallout Equestria, I'll listen to Project Horizon, I'll listen to Pink Eyes, I'll listen to all of that exists of Heroes, and then just read the last two chapters.
Heroes is such a good recording. It's just such a great recording, and it's so sad that he hasn't finished it. And I know he's just had so many much trouble the last few years.
I'll listen to what exists of Visual Ponies Homelands. I'll listen to what exists of the Dead Tree stuff. I'll listen to Merchants of Hope. I'll listen to the Merchants of Hope, Long Winter, Chumming Waters, and Stable Tech R&D. Shout out to Dice Works Fix. And but then I was like, well, what do I listen to now? And I just someone's echoing. It's probably me, but I don't know.
Have you listened
Echo.
to the Sparkle? No, I'm echoing
Oh, okay. But anyways, it's like
because I didn't put on headphones.
but basically so then I'll sit there after catching up on all the audiobooks that are currently being made. Yes, I've been mentioned Gamma's Fix too. But anyways, and then like, I'm just like saying like I need another audiobook or a new chapter in the ones that are being made, and eventually I'll just cave and start listening to Fall of Equestria again. I've lost count how many times I've listened to the entirety of Fall of Equestria. I know I've gone through Project Horizons at least 3 or 4 times, and some of Gamma's Fix, Merchants of Hope, and Long Winter at least twice. Stable Tech R&D and Chumming Waters at least twice. But it's like, why are there so many
everyone who's
not enough audiobooks?
Speaking of that, by the way, everyone who has been listening thus far and is still here, or decided to skip to this part for whatever reason, I just want to tell you all that you should subscribe to our channel, Nuclear Horseman Studios, because we will be putting out more and more audio dramas and audio books in the near future.
Also, since we're going with the whole plug our channel moment, hit the bell icon to be notified when we release new content.
Yeah, it's kind of problematic because we don't release often enough to get that kind of thing. So you have to hit the bell if you want to see it every time. Yeah. Or you can come back and try to check us out, but that'll take a lot of work for you. We don't want to
click the bell, and then you have to go down to notify me when there's an upload. Like, it's a lot of extra steps to jump through in modern YouTube.
Yeah, we're sorry. It's just that we want you to be able to see our content when it actually comes out, rather than checking it like months after it does and just feeling bad. We want you to all be able to know what's coming out. So hopefully, in the near future, maybe in the next year, we will have a steadier upload stream with a few different groups going at a few different projects going at once, and maybe we'll be able to get something out at least every week.
Hopefully,
at that point, everything should go a lot better and more smoothly for you all, all of you listeners. But for now, with our slightly slowed upload times and production times, and we've just been hitting a little bit of a wall, especially with me and my writing and comic and his
social anxiety.
Yeah. So, me and my executive dysfunction and comic and his social anxiety, we've been hitting these walls, and it's just that we will definitely be continuing, but we want you to be there with us when we do. So, thank you all for listening. Do we want to end the podcast now, or do we want to keep
that? We will tip it, unless someone has another topic to bring up. I do.
And now, a word from our sponsors.
See, we had the word from our sponsors earlier.
Wait, yeah, I have some words first.
Zen is Dead Tree Studios is our partner / sponsor. Zen left.
Our new sponsor of the last end of this is a revolutionary weight gain / loss product called Depression. Depression. Your weight will fluctuate.
God. Yeah, with corona-induced depression, and then seasonal depression coming on from the winter.
Yeah, if the cons had been going this year, we probably would have gotten more done.
Maybe.
Frankly,
maybe. Maybe.
You would have wanted to get stuff done for the cons. You know you would have. We would have gotten more done. And so it's just that we need that push.
If you want to be able to gauge when these podcasts will occur, I'll try to have them scheduled a couple days to a week in advance, but usually, with maybe the exception of the audio files series, a lot more short form content stuff. They usually will
Yeah,
happen a week or so after the upload to give people enough time to watch what we're talking about.
And you can always follow the Twitter,
Yes,
our Twitter.
We do have a Twitter.
It's a lot more active.
It's at Nuke Horse Studio because Nuclear Horseman Studios is too long.
You can follow us on Twitter. You can follow Comic on Twitter and look at his bullshit.
You can join our follow our Facebook page. Yes, that exists. We have a band camp where you can.
That's what I forgot to do. I forgot to share this on the Facebook page. Not our Facebook page, but the Facebook. That's where I forgot to share the podcast. I knew I was forgetting somewhere.
I didn't share this podcast on the Facebook page. I kind of forget it exists sometimes.
Yeah, but it actually is somewhat popular for Fallout Equestria content. It can gain you some extra views for Fallout Equestria content on that Facebook page with all the Fallout Equestria stuff.
There's a Facebook group.
That's what I mean.
Yes, but
you know what I mean.
There's also our if you want to download a high quality version of our productions, including the Chilling Wasteland Stories to Tell in the Dark. There is our Bandcamp, which does for the low price, I think 50 cents a track.
I've got to go, but I want to end off on saying one more thing. Next time on the podcast, we'll discuss whether or not Chalkfeet qualifies as a twink. But
whoa! That seemed out of line. If I didn't know you guys, how you guys usually talk to each other. Oh man, okay. I think that's a good note to end on. It seems accidentally.
I'm going to continue talking to you, Comic, but we can end the podcast now.
I definitely think that his interruption on the really inappropriate ending was probably intentional. I know that Chalkfeet and
are we not live anymore?
We are live. That was live.
Thank you, all you listeners.
He said that live. Freaking strike. Why?
We'll do it live.
I gotta find the right program to end the stream. So
you gotta find OBS.
Yeah. So yeah.
Have a good night, guys.
To those who stuck around to the very end, I apologize for Strike. He was making a joke, I hope. It was a joke, right, Jock? You don't take it offensively, right?
We'll have our people talk to your people, Dice.